Hi, I'm Drew Broach at NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune. We're going to tell you a little something about the Huey Long Bridge today. It's been 5 years since this bridge was widened at a cost of $1.2 billion to connect the east and west banks of Jefferson Parish. It was a huge undertaking. The original Depression-era bridge was, I think, opened around 1932. Two extremely narrow lanes on each side of the bridge, something like 9 feet wide, no shoulders. People's knuckles would whiten and their teeth would clench whenever they drove across the Huey Long Bridge. But 5 years ago, this week, the state opened a $1.2 billion widening of the Huey Long Bridge. And we're going to take a look at that, tell you about how things have improved and how there's an unfulfilled promise in all this. So we're in Elmwood right now on the east bank of the river. We're heading up the ramp to go to the widened Huey Long Bridge. Again, this bridge was widened over the course of 7 years at a cost of $1.2 billion. The opening of the widened bridge was in 2013. On June 16th, which is this Saturday. So we're coming up on the 5-year anniversary of the widened bridge. Now, everybody agrees that the traffic on the bridge and the driving of the bridge is vastly improved. It's just unbelievably better. Maybe it's even worth $1.2 billion. As I said before, on the old bridge opened in 1932, there were 2 9-foot wide lanes in each direction and no shoulder. And it was just horror stories about people being scared driving over the bridge, running up against the concrete on the side, scraping each other's cars, and it was just a nightmare. It was very difficult to drive. But now, as you can see, we've got 3 lanes instead of 2 in each direction. These lanes are 11 feet wide instead of 9 feet. And you've got 10 feet of shoulder, 8 on the outside and 2 on the inside in each direction. So traffic is much, much better on the Huey Long Bridge. But here's the interesting thing. At the time the bridge expansion was being built, all the politicians and the economic officials said it was going to open up the west bank of Jefferson Parish for real estate development. That this was the last frontier of hundreds and hundreds of unspoiled acres in Jefferson Parish that could be put into commerce. Well, the thing is, that hasn't happened. In the last 5 years, instead of the bridge opening up the west bank for commerce, there's been very little commerce. There's been relatively little real estate development over here. Nothing like what all was predicted by the politicians and the economic development officials back in the 2000s and around the time the bridge opened in 2013. So while traffic is much, much better, we still are going to see coming up here in the Avondale, Bridge City, 9 Mile Point area, vast tracts of undeveloped land, just waiting for buyers to come in and to put them into, whether it's retail or it's housing or industrial development. There's all kinds of possibilities over here. So I've spent the last couple of weeks talking to some of the major landowners over here on the West Bank, as well as economic development officials and political figures, to find out what happened. And the consensus is this. The bridge expansion was terrific, not only for traffic, but that it was very necessary for the West Bank to become a thriving economic area. But the bridge expansion alone was not going to do it, and it never was, in their opinion. That it's one of the key elements to making this area right for commerce, but it's only one of them. That some other things are needed too. One is the economy's got to get better, and there's not a lot a bridge can do to improve the economy on its own. That's out of the control of the highway department. But the bridge is a big help, not only for traffic, but for economic development. But for economic development, for this area to open up, as the politicians said it would, we're going to need a better economy. There's some speculation, or informed speculation among business officials, that Louisiana needs to reform its tax structure too. The legislature has been going for several years now back and forth on how to balance its budget and whether to tax this or tax that, cut this, cut that. And there's not a lot of long-term stability there. Some business leaders say the legislature and the governor need to decide on what our taxing philosophy is going to be, and to put that in place for the long term, so that businesses will know what to expect and they won't have this unpredictability. Some other factors in the lack of development on the West Bank end of the Huey Long Bridge 5 years after the bridge widened. You got the economy, you got the taxing structure of the state, you've got Louisiana's existential crisis about its coast and the disappearing coast across the southern third of the state. And that despite efforts by the government to restore and protect the coast, there's some fear that it may not work, and perhaps some outside investors who might be interested in coming over here and opening a business or developing a big tract of land on the West Bank, that they may just be fearful of that and not willing to try, because they may not be here 20, 30, 50 years from now. So that's another factor. As you can see here, we're coming off the Huey Long Bridge. We're driving in West Jefferson now, headed towards the Churchill area, and there's no development here at all on either side of US 90. This is the area again that when the bridge expansion opened in 2013, there were predictions that the widening was going to open up the West Bank for development. This was the last frontier for major large-scale development. You may recall after just months after Hurricane Katrina, a Los Angeles-based company called US Home said it was looking at a piece of property over here to build as many as 20,000 single-family residences. That was going to be a huge boost. That didn't happen, obviously. A year or two ago, another company out of Lafayette, Southern Lifestyle Development, said it was looking at, again, real estate development for as many as 20,000 people over here. It would be mixed single-family apartments, retail, commercial, and everything. And there was some prediction that that they would make that deal official within a year. That hasn't happened either. Again, lots of undeveloped land over here on the West Bank, on the west side of the Huey Long Bridge, where despite the predictions when the bridge was widened that there would be a lot of development, we have seen very, very little. There are some other improvements in West Jefferson in addition to the bridge. This area down here has now got an almost complete hurricane protection system, which has been a big boost for flood insurance over here. It's still expensive, of course, as is flood insurance all over South Louisiana, but it's much more affordable now that the hurricane protection levy has been completed. The new flood maps from FEMA are out, and that has made flood insurance less expensive. The hurricane protection levy has also reduced the cost of land development. It's still expensive. You may still have to put some fill in over here to raise your property up, but you don't have to do, in many cases, you don't have to do a lot of the wetlands mitigation that previously was required. So again, the 5-year anniversary of the 5th anniversary of the Huey Long Bridge expansion is coming up this Saturday. It's June 16th. It was 5 years ago Saturday that the state finished spending $1.2 billion widening the Huey P. Long Bridge from 2 extremely narrow shoulderless lanes in each direction to 6 nice 11-foot wide lanes with 10 feet of shoulder on each side. The consensus again is that traffic is vastly improved. It's much easier to get across the bridge here, but that the predictions of major development on the West Bank side of the bridge in Avondale, Bridge City, 9 Mile Point, and in the sort of the Churchill Fairfield area, that the predictions that the bridge widening was going to open those up for development, the development has not come. There's been a few things here and there, but nothing like, I think, what was sort of conjured up by the politicians and the economic development officials at the time the bridge was widened. We're going to have a major story on this in the Times-Picayune and on NOLA.com later this week, probably on Friday. I hope you'll take a look at the in-depth analysis of that at that time. And along with it, we'll have a story about one of the beneficiaries of the Huey Long Bridge expansion, not West Jefferson as was expected, but the Elmwood area. Excuse me. And how the Elmwood area, which was already growing and booming and bustling with retail commerce, how it has just accelerated since then, and some interesting changes that may be coming into the works for Elmwood later on. Again, I'm Drew Broach from NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune. We've been looking at the widening of the Huey Long Bridge 5 years after the $1.2 billion project ended. And we'll have stories and photographs and video on NOLA.com and in the Times-Picayune on Friday. Take care.